Let's do it. The great Wayne Randazzo on We Gotta Believe. Quite the weekend for you, my man.
Pretty exciting, to be a part of history like that. Is you just hope to get one call like that in your career. I'm still fairly early in mine, and to get Albert's 700th home run is awesome. I mean, it's just something you never forget, and I won't even have a chance to forget it because that call will be played a lot, over the years, and it's going to be cool to hear a year from now or 5 years from now, just like it's been the last couple of days.
Were you like monitoring him, being like, all right, if we get a couple bombs in the next couple days here, and the way it's all kind of lining up, and then you're like, oh crap, this might happen?
Well, yeah, he'd hit 698 a week before the game, so it looked like it'd be in play, and I was kind of hoping he'd hit one in San Diego in the series before that, so that he'd come in with 699, and we'd really be on Pujols' watch for 700. But coming in with 698, I felt like the chances weren't as good. He'd have to hit two.
You got to be thinking. There was no way you were thinking 2 home runs that night, right?
Well, it's possible. He hit 499 and 500 in the same game.
Oh,
so he'd done it before, and Andrew Heaney, a lefty who gives up a lot of homers, so it was already on my radar that he could at least hit. If he hit one early, then 2 were in play, and he hit that one in the third inning. And at that point, I knew he was going to hit 700.
Really?
I was completely confident we would see 700 that night. There's just something in the air at Dodger Stadium, and
no bullshit. You thought?
Yeah, no, I was 100% ready.
Wow,
100% ready.
That is awesome. From a preparation standpoint, or you genuinely, like, if you had to put money on it, you would have said he's hitting another one tonight?
I was going to say he's hitting another one tonight. Absolutely. He's just, after the first one, he walked it off. He stared at. He was just in the zone.
Yeah,
it was going to be tough.
Forget about that one game. He's been in the zone, since the All-Star break. He's been absolutely out of the world. There was so much to do about the broadcast, because we also had Judge Watch and Pujols Watch, and they both happened to be on Apple TV and then ESPN and Fox. Like, it was a weird situation with the Yankees where they barely played on their own network for like 4 straight games. Yeah. And then Pujols, everyone was kind of talking about Judge, and then Pujols all of a sudden is in the mix. Is that something that you guys, the fans made a very big deal of it, like which announcers get to call it, and we think some broadcasts are better than others, and who deserves it and all that. What's the broadcaster's point of view, both when you're the new guy coming in and the guy getting bumped out?
When you're on radio, like I usually am, you're doing every game. There's nobody's bumping you out. You're doing every game. You're doing the playoffs. You're doing the World Series. You're there every single time. You're going to get all the big moments and all the big plays. But if you're doing TV, especially for a good team, you're going to sacrifice some games. I mean, think about what's ahead for the Mets and the Braves this weekend. SNY is only doing one of the big 3 games in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So that going in. You take a TV job knowing that there's a lot of good things that come with it, but you might get bumped off on some of these big moments. And that's just the sacrifice you make when you go to TV. So on one hand, it's unfair to those announcers because they put in all the work and they're there for all the big moments leading up to that. And then when something like that happens, they're not there for it. And I think the fans feel a little awkward about it. And I think that the broadcasters themselves are probably bummed out or feeling frustrated about it, which is understandable. And they should be there. But on the other hand, national TV games are a good thing for your baseball team. It means they're in a good spot. They're doing something that's important. And the game needs that. The game needs that platform, whether it is streaming like the Apple games or whether it's on Fox or ESPN. The game needs that national attention too. And for Albert Pujols to do that in a game that was being shown nationally and streaming in that way, I think it's good for the platform. It's great for the game, and it was a good thing ultimately for Apple. I mean, now that moment lives on. They could market that forever. 700 homers.
I don't know what Apple paid for the whole package, or if they pay by games or whatever, but I would imagine they made their investment back with just that one moment. Like, whether or not it's literally dollars and cents with the money back, from a notoriety point of view, an exposure point of view, Apple TV became, it was the talk of the night.
And no offense to the Cardinals broadcasters and the Cardinals, well, offense to the Cardinals fans. As a Mets fan, I'm happy. I'm happy for you, Wayne. I'm happy for Apple TV, and I'm happy for everyone else that they didn't get their own little personal announcers. We didn't get Pete's 53rd home run, right? That was on Fox. So I'd like to know. It just kind of reaffirms to me that maybe like the Cardinals' black magic voodoo isn't like as strong as it used to be back in the day, because that's going to be very important potentially coming in October now. So
well, I was going to say their black magic voodoo is alive and well, just in the fact that Pujols is hitting all these fucking home runs. That's whether or not he's hitting them for certain broadcasters is besides the point. The thought of having to deal with Pujols home runs in the playoffs again, that's something that I thought that ship has sailed. I'll never have to deal with it ever again. Even if we face the Cardinals, he'll be, a has-been. And it's like, oh my God, far from it, man. Far from it.
Yeah. And Yachty and Wainwright are still there. And they've got two of the best players in the league, Goldschmidt and Arenado. So I wouldn't say the black voodoo magic is gone. And I would say that in October, they're going to be a tough customer for whoever.
Under the radar, because I feel like, the Dodgers are kind of just, we've said all year, in this class of their own. The Mets and the Braves are having this, pretty much, historical. Only a couple of times have we seen a slugfest like this. And no one's really talking about like the Central as much. And meanwhile, the Cardinals in the playoffs with some of those names, I don't want any of that. And it's like, pick your poison, because who do you want? You want to face the Dodgers? Even, if the Padres end up in it, we've not fared well against them. Even despite the fact that we're beating the shit out of the Phillies all year, they scare me. But the Cardinals have kind of just been, we're over here doing Cardinals things. Sends a shiver down my spine, man.
Yeah, it's all the best teams all playing each other. So nobody's a good matchup, right? The Cardinals have their
you're right.
Yeah, the Cardinals have their reasons to be scared. Atlanta can easily win a series. The Dodgers are the best team for a reason. The Mets are really good. I mean, the Mets have put themselves in a great position to do some damage in October. They've got the two big starters. Even though Jake didn't look right the other day, you still feel confident he'll be fine and give you the best that he's got. Scherzer's an animal. Chris Batten's been really solid for them, and they're hitting. Alonso's had a great couple of weeks. So is Lindor, and I think the lineup is going to look a lot better anyway when Starling Marte comes back. So the Mets are in a great position. They can easily win the whole thing, and they could easily get bounced in the first round. So hop on the bandwagon, enjoy the ride.
That's pretty much everybody, and that's why baseball is what it is, for better or worse. When it comes to doing the national broadcast, like when you are following a team day in and day out as the radio broadcaster, which to me is like, I think of, obviously television is TV, maybe, from a business point of view, there's the cachet of television, but I think of the radio broadcast in baseball as like, I don't know, like this sacred thing, right? Or like there's just some like beautiful love of the game sort of thing that goes on in radio. When you get pulled off, or I guess in general, how does you just have your own contract with Apple and they give you, you're going to be on this game, and this game, circle your calendar?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a freelance thing when I do some of the other stuff. I did some Fox games last year and the Apple games this year. Just kind of, they kind of tell you what they need, and if I can jump out and do it, I can. There's a couple I turned down this year because of my commitment to the Mets. So it just depends, and I like getting the national opportunities. It's fun to see perspectives of other teams. It's good to learn the league that way. I did Cleveland and Seattle like a month ago, and I would have not really dug as deep into what the Guardians and the Mariners are doing as much as I did for that game. So it's fun to do that. And, I would never want to lose having the local aspect of it, and you mentioned radio. Yeah, there's an intimacy with the radio announcers. There's a romanticism with the radio broadcast. And I think it's because you can take us wherever you go. Like if you're going to the beach, you can bring us with. If you're in your car, we're there with you. If you're out in the garden, messing with the tomatoes, we can be there with you. Whereas TV, you got to sit there and watch it. It's a captive audience. And I think people react and interact more with the TV broadcast. But, radio, I think, is just kind of a companion. And especially as the summer drones on and baseball's there along with you, there's a nice thing about it. And I would never want to lose being a part of a local team broadcast like that.
It's awesome too. And I always try to have my Howie and Wayne days where it's like usually on a Sunday afternoon, I just go for a drive, open the windows, and you guys just kind of take me there. And sometimes I do need a break from just watching the team, especially when the offense decides to go to sleep. It's like, I'm going to let the guys just kind of, let my brain cook. They're going to tell me the story. And that's my question here is, like, do you go into games that are like, this one might be a little bit of a snoozer by the end? You just have to load up on stories just to keep it going? Because that job is incredible. It's how you guys can keep us entertained for 3 hours at a time, every single day, 162 times a year.
Well, thanks a lot. First of all. I'm glad we're cooking your brain. That's what we're trying to do. We understand what's what. If the team is really good and it's a close game, we're on the edge of our seats too. We want to see how it turns. We want to see Edwin Diaz come in and strike everybody out and react to that. And if he doesn't, we'll react in that way too. We're just reading and reacting for 3 hours, really. I mean, yesterday's game was a blowout. So what are we going to sit there and do? We just start talking about other stuff, and we start thinking about, planning ahead for the postseason, or tell some stories about, at the Coliseum, there's some lady cooking hot dogs between the visitors clubhouse and the visitors dugout. So the players have to walk by this woman who's cooking all these hot dogs. And that's pretty unique. I've never seen that in a ballpark before. So I talked about it on the radio yesterday.
Yeah.
There's just whatever's on our minds. I think you're going to hear
that's
it.
what's cool in a way. I've said this about Gary, Keith, and Ron, but it also, I feel this with you and Howie in the podcast era. Sometimes it feels like you guys are doing a podcast while watching a baseball game. And, you also happen to get some, details of a baseball game while it's just two guys shooting the shit. And it's always baseball centric, but it's like you're just dropping in on a conversation that happens to be hyper detailed about the product in front of them. But there is something, obviously at one point it was like the medium that everybody had to listen to, and then television came along, and I don't know what's next, but I think baseball on the radio will last forever. And it's like, other sports are too fast. Football, I don't really care for on radio. Baseball, I almost think is better on the radio because just the history and the pageantry. There's a lot to talk about in between. There's something special about it.
Yeah, we hear that sometimes. People say that. Yeah, football. You're really trying to follow a ball or a puck all the time, and it's
forget it. It's like
you're trying to. The whole point is to follow the ball and the puck in those sports. Whereas baseball, one guy's holding the ball for a while, and then they'll hit it and they'll chase it and they'll get it back to where it needs to go. But 80% of the game, the pitcher's just holding the ball, so you don't have to follow it. You have to follow the trajectory of the game and the season, and what. If something's flying in Howie's face, you never know what's going on over there. So, being able to poke at Howie and push his buttons a little bit and tell him how old he is and all that when he starts talking about, I don't know, Rusty Staub and all these things he likes to do. It's he was talking about some TV show that he said he watched, something about a secretary from like 1958 or something. I don't know what he's talking about, but just kind of letting him ride in those moments and teasing him about being ancient is always it's a good way to kill at least an hour of the three or so that we have.
Yeah, sure. Now, without putting anybody in an awkward position, like around the baseball world with baseball fans, Apple TV, new to the baseball realm, a few people kind of getting their feet wet for the first time. And especially when you're coming from SNY and WOR now is the radio?
CBS.
Like we're talking about some all-time greats and some people who are really like, good at this. And I just know that in the beginning when Apple TV first started and there was a lot of criticism, I do remember once you did yours, there was talk around like Mets Twitter that was like, except for Randazzo. Wayne Randazzo was the thing. Like I understand what you guys are saying about some of these other broadcasts, but look out for Wayne. He knows what he's doing, and like you'll be able to hear it, and you can tell the difference between people who are really good at it and kind of lifelongers, and then you really heard it. You nailed the Pujols call. There's no right way to do it, but there is a wrong way to do it. And you can kind of tell when someone, of course, sitting from a position of no talent and not knowing it all. As a fan, you just hear when someone nailed it or when they didn't. And you had to feel good about that one. I feel like that when you were done with it, were you like nailed it?
Yeah, I was really happy with the way it turned. I think we talked about it in the morning. We had a Zoom call with the whole crew, and I had said on that call that the producer had talked about what our approach should be, and largely to just kind of be minimal about it. And I said, I just want to reiterate, if he hits 699 when he comes up for 700, we're really not going to say anything. I want to, on TV, I never call the pitches. We just kind of talk around them. I never really say ball one, strike two. But on the Pujols at bat, I wanted to call the pitches only and not talk about anything else. And then if he did hit it, just call it and let the pictures tell the rest of the story. And that's exactly what we did. I was really proud of the way that our crew handled it, the way that our director followed Pujols as he, for some reason, peeled off from his teammates to go say hello to Adrian Beltre, which was kind of
at first I thought it would be like family, kids, dying grandma, something important. It's just fucking Adrian Beltre. I was like, what was that about?
That was weird. That was weird.
He said to whoever he had just drove in, he puts his hand out, kind of like, hang on one second. You see him like, what the fuck? So that was a nice little quirk that will always be a part of that moment. But you hear so much about not what you don't say if you're a nerd like me and you follow like baseball and baseball broadcasts. They always talk about the game breathing, right? And like letting the sounds of the game tell the story. And that one, you nailed it there. So
the story told itself, and Pujols had a great reaction to it. And his teammates, once he finally went over there, his teammates finally were happy to have for him, and he went straight to Yachty, and it was cool. It was really a good moment. I was just proud of the way that we called it and got out and really were minimal in the booth about the real story, which was just Albert reaching that number and him enjoying that moment. So it was great. And I'm glad it happened. I'm really humbled and privileged to be a part of baseball history like that. I mean, it's only the fourth guy to ever do it. The first guy didn't even have TV. So it's only a few 700 home run calls ever. And
more importantly, I don't know if there may not be another one. I mean, I don't know, like the way baseball is going, I guess, it's who knows what happens 100 years from now. But if it does at all, it'll be a very long time before there's another. There was that time, probably because of steroids and whatnot, that it was a lot of 400s and 500s and then a couple 600s. And, there was multiple of those events happening. Now it's like, who's going to approach 700 if, Tatis would need to be healthy and stop getting in accidents and do it for, 25 years straight before we even start to consider it. It's you're one of the last maybe to ever call a 700th.
It's really special. And, you don't know how the game's going to go from here, but, Albert kind of did it like Henry Aaron, just consistent, never had a 50 homer season. Just kept crunching them out every single year, and then this year, he was hitting 190 with like 4 home runs in the middle of July.
Yeah,
so
and then the steroids happened.
17 homers in 55 games. I mean, he just went nuts and got there. So it's awesome that Albert put everybody in a position to watch that and to see it happen. And congratulations to him. It's his moment, and that's really something that will stand out forever.
I don't know about you, Clem, but I think we mentioned it on the show earlier this season. Looking at the numbers, I was like, man, Pujols is going to get to like 692 or something. And then what do? Do you do another season where, you're batting 190 like he was, and you're just trying to squeeze out these 8 home runs? Like, God, you're probably just praying every day, let me somehow do it this year. Now it's like, maybe he'll come back to hit 630. Who knows at this point, the way he's been playing this half of the year. But I didn't think I thought he was going to fall just short of it before he went nuts this
he sounded okay with that. He said, and Chris Young made a good point on our broadcast. He said there's always another number. Like if you hit 700, well, 714 Babe Ruth's right there, right?
Yes, but 7 is like but very rare air.
Would his career have been any lesser if he would have hit 697? No, I don't think so.
Of course not. But there's, what is really crazy is looking in hindsight now, how the Cardinals didn't resign him and how he ended up leaving, a guy of that caliber on a franchise of that caliber. I don't remember what I was thinking when the Angels signed him, but that's one of those guys who, usually doesn't leave the franchise they're on unless it's like the Royals or somebody who can't pay you, then you understand. But a premier franchise and one of the all-time greats part ways, like,
Yeah, it was weird coming off a World Series too. Just kind of like Freddie Freeman in this past off season.
yeah, but which people, you know, are basically talking about now is what happened. That was so weird. That was, you know, they botched it. We got fired agents. Matt Olson's batting a buck 090, you know, like people are saying how bad it was. And at the time, it didn't seem like Albert and the Angels were like that big of a, like, what's happening. But now, like, imagine if he was doing this in Anaheim instead of in St. Louis, you know, it would never.
It all went so badly in Anaheim, especially at the end. You know, it almost, but when he got cut last year, it seemed like he was done. And that was kind of another thing about him doing it against the Dodgers, was that the Dodgers kind of revived him. You know, they made him that left-handed masher, a kind of a specialist, and he really came around as a Dodger. So he had a really good relationship with Dave Roberts. And I think when they got to Dodger Stadium, and it just seemed like he wasn't going to do it in Milwaukee or somewhere weird. Like, you know, he was going to do it at Dodger Stadium in LA against the Dodgers. And they just kind of put a bow on his career revival, which started there and ended back in St. Louis. It's really a beautiful story at the end of the day of how Albert.
It wasn't happening to the goddamn Cardinals. I would enjoy it more, but really, I wish nothing good for them, man.
I think that's why he probably came back too. He's like, you know, these guys are super competitive. Like, remember the Pete thing with the Cardinals? He wanted to play the game after the rain. It's like, because we're gonna win. Like, Pujols is like that. He's the machine. He's just like he's had all these home runs in his career, but he's also like, oh, I'm going to a place where they do black magic and everything's going to be fine. I could probably hit 800 if I stay here. Like,
I thought early on, I was like, I think this guy's hitting 800. It didn't seem that far-fetched because he just came out of the gates, you know, second to Bonds and like MVP voting when he was like 20 or whatever or whatever age you might have.
Wait, how old is Albert Pujols? You know the truth. I know all those insiders, those baseball insiders. Is he like 49? Like, what is his real age? Does he have an age?
If he was 49, wouldn't you even be more impressed? If he is 49, you can just say it. Actually, I'm 49.
Like, yeah, right. Now and be like, now I'm an old man and I'm still hitting these bombs. Do you, when you have a moment like that approaching, do you kind of mentioned how you were going to let, you know, the game breathe, but did you have like a pseudo script in your head?
Not really. You know, I asked Howie about it, as I always do when things are coming up that are big. You know, I go to Howie and ask what his advice would be, and he said not to really script anything because you don't know what kind of home run it's going to be. You know,
right.
Mike McGwire hit a weird line drive home run when he broke the record.
There was no like,
yeah.
You know, like beautiful, like it is high, it's deep.
They didn't have that. So Albert could have dinged one off the foul pole, you know, or it could have been a home run to win the game. You could have been.
But can you script like the second call, if you will, the second? Can you say like, all right, I'll wait to see if it's a line drive, a foul, a high ball, or this ball, and then after that, I'm gonna say, you know, this one's for blah, you know, whatever, you know. Do you think about something like that?
Joe Buck style. See you later tonight.
Right.
You know, and that was a nod to his pops.
Yeah, you do think about that. You know, I didn't know if I wanted, because I really wanted to get out. So I didn't really want to go into Bonds and Aaron and Ruth being the others. I got there eventually. I did after we came back, you know, to talking. I talked about Barry Bonds and Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron being the others. But I wanted to say the 700 home run club. And, you know, I think people sometimes say 500 club or 3,000 hit club or whatever. I didn't want to say 700 club, you know, because of that TV show. So I had to work around that. So I wanted to make sure I said 700 home run club. And that was really the only thing I had in my head. I wanted to say 700 right away, which I did. And then I wanted to put him in the 700 home run club, which I did. So other than the one or two things, I didn't really script it or think about what kind of home run it could be. I just wanted to be locked in and react to the moment.
Would you rather have called if Aaron Judge got 61 or 62 on that Apple broadcast? Would you rather have done that or Pujols?
Well, you know, I think you know, people in New York, it stands out in some ways, and you know, Andrew Marchand pays more attention to New York than anything else, so it's that creeps in your head. But no, I think it was perfect. Albert's 700. You know, Judge, it's going to be cool when he breaks Maris's record, but it is just an American League record.
It's not Maris's record. It's just Maris's number in my mind.
Yeah.
AL record doesn't really mean anything. And
yeah,
people want to say, what about steroids? It's like, well, I don't know, man. These are the balls that were hit, and that's what was recorded. So, I live in reality over here. It's a great accomplishment, but
wouldn't it be funny if they just said, "Congratulations, Aaron Judge. He ties Roger Maris for the 7th most home runs in the season."
That's what I mean. There's been a handful of guys who have done it like 6 or 7 times in the 60s. What's really the big deal? I would totally do that. I'd be so petty as a Mets fan. If I was a broadcaster, I would ruin that moment. I'd be like, Aaron, what's the big deal? I don't even get it, guys.
Yeah. No, I think it worked out perfect. I mean, 700 is such a huge number, and over the course of a career to get there and only be the 4th guy to do it, and the first guy in a long time since Barry got to 700. It's really special, and I wouldn't have traded that one for anything else.
And the fact that you got to call it is just one of those things. I'm sure you probably have to pinch yourself just thinking about it. I got to know, when, was this like your dream job from like the time you can remember, knowing what the heck a job was? Or did you just have my voice? I have a terrible voice. I don't know why I'm on a podcast. I'm just trying to make money for my family right now. But were you someone who was just able, you could talk the talk and you had a good enough voice to, make it all happen, and you love the sport of baseball? Or how did Wayne Randazzo just end up in this spot where he's calling Albert Pujols his 700th home run?
Yeah, it's pretty stupid. Clem, first of all, you're beautiful and perfect no matter how you are.
Okay? I like you, Wayne.
So anyway, aside from that, second, I wanted to be a baseball announcer literally my entire life. This is what I dreamed about. Growing up watching Harry Carey in Chicago and watching him just be a maniac for all those games. You don't even know, looking back, I guess people probably thought the Cubs stunk and they were not going to win, but as a kid, you're like, hey, they might win today. That maybe they'll run down this 15-game deficit they have. And, Harry believes why it might happen.
Yeah.
So it's always what I wanted to do, and specifically to baseball. I don't have nearly the passion for I like broadcasting in general, and I like broadcasting football and basketball, but I don't have near the passion that I have for the sport of baseball. And I've just gotten really lucky. I have a voice that people like to hear on these broadcasts, and I followed it pretty persistently to get somewhere, to get to the big leagues, and was really fortunate to land with the Mets, and I've made the most of it in my time there. And I've just if you would have told me as a college kid going to Cubs Cardinals games, watching Albert hit 70 home runs against the Cubs over a 5-year span, that I'd be calling his 700th home run, it's the only national baseball broadcast call, I would have thought you were insane. But somehow the ball rolled to that point, and I was fortunate to be in that spot at that time.
Tip of the cap to you too for being a professional and not doing the stuff Kevin said, where it's like Pujols hit 700. I guess that's a big deal if you want to acknowledge it.
You're like you grew up a diehard Cubs fan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. I'd be like, what happened? I would be talking about whoever's up next. Be like, Trey Turner steps up to the plate now. It's a 4-0 game. Whatever.
Yeah, I should have called him out for blowing off his teammates to go shake hands with Belcher. Look, Brendan Donovan's just standing there with his hands in the pocket, waiting for Albert to come back.
Wayne has you bring an old timey vibe sometimes. I feel like that classic broadcaster's voice. Is that something that you cultivate over time, or did you always kind of have that welcome to the ballpark?
No, I mean, I don't know. It's just how I feel like I talk, and when I project, it sounds that way. I know, I'm glad Boomer and Gio like it, and I'm glad that people are into it. And no, I'm not trying to sound any sort of way. And if it comes off as old timey or whatever, or if it makes you harken back to the old days,
classic. I think you can play that now, or 200 years from now. It'll never feel. It's just baseball. It'll always feel. Yeah. Did you listen to it right away? Do you listen back
to the home run?
Yeah, I hate hearing myself on a podcast or watching videos that I record.
Yeah.
But if it was a quick, 15, 25 second thing, whatever, I might give it a listen. But I feel like I'd be like, nope, can't hear it, don't hear it.
No, I went back and watched 699 and 700 back after I got back to the hotel that night, and I've watched them again. I just want to make sure they hold up. I want to make sure if I hear it once and it sounded good, I want to go back and hear it again and a few other times just to make sure it holds up the way that I want it to. And not even just for a call like that, but even for other stuff that I feel like or big moments in a Mets season too. I'll go back sometimes and just make sure it sounded the way that I thought it did in my head. And if there's anything I want to correct for next time or whatever. So probably no next time for 700. So I was happy I got it right the first time.
Did you? I think I saw you tweeted the regular Cards broadcaster. Was that you, Danny? Something? Yeah. Is that something like because I'm sure everybody says what you need to say professionally, but I'm sure the guys from SNY and whatever the Yes Network and whatever the Cardinals broadcast channel is go home every night going, fuck, like I wish why is it, out of all 162 games, it falls on this one day.
Randazzo! The guy's just yelling at the moon.
I mean, I know they probably don't hold you personal, but is there any talk between the broadcasters like, sorry, man, I know this sucks, but I'll try to do it justice?
Yeah, I felt that way. I don't know if other guys would have done the same thing or whatever, and you don't have to. But if I felt that way, just because I would feel that way if I was him. If I'd been following this, and I know Dan grew up a Cardinal fan, and he's been the voice of the Cardinals on TV for a long time.
Brutal.
He's called a lot of Pujols homers.
Brutal.
By the time Albert got to 500, he was an angel, and 600 was an angel. So
he didn't get any of the fucking what. Shit.
So 700, he's back at the Cardinals, and this was it. And Dan's called all of them, up to this point this year. And I felt a little bit like it was unfair, and I would have felt that way if I was him. So I did want to acknowledge that, and Cardinals fans too, I'm sure felt the same way, that they wanted to hear their guy do it. They didn't get to, and I did it as much justice as I could, and hopefully they liked it anyway. But I'm sure there's a good pocket of Cardinal fans that even if they thought the call was great, would have rather.
Yeah, you got to hear. So here's my idea, and I don't know if this is even like legal or contracts or whatever. And I don't know if Danny's an older gentleman, so maybe he's not as plugged in. But if you're ever in this position, or Gary, Howie, whoever, I would just go live on Instagram during these at-bats and be like, you can hear Michael K's call. You can hear your broadcaster's call on Instagram, on whatever. I'll just do, just for those at-bats. I know that's, maybe that's rebroadcasting, or maybe there's some trouble you can get in. But if I'm just watching TV and all I'm doing is reacting as a fan tonight, because I think you would get a ton of followers, a ton of interaction, viewers, the whole nine.
I think, if somebody did that, they would be casted as looking pretty unprofessional, and I think they would draw the ire of their fellow broadcasters. But you think so? Yeah. But would people be like, that's bullshit? That'd be a tough look. It would be, you would look petty, I think, at that point.
I feel like, I'm sure. What would you think, Clem? I feel like as a fan, I would be like okay with it. I can understand within the fraternity.
How do you know what's going to happen? Like, you're just going to do that?
If it was me, if it was my team, if you will, mine, and Aaron Judge is up, and we know 61, 62 is coming, I would do all his at-bats.
It would be, imagine Michael K doing that now, because they haven't really done many games lately. And he'd be on like day 5 of the it'd be horrible.
It'll all be worth it, and you finally get it.
You know what the sick part is as a Mets fan that hates the Yankees, I would watch all of them and I'd be like, oh, Michael K's bleeding out every single night. This is incredible stuff to watch. He get more viewers, trust me. We did a live stream of the Mets-Giants wild card game, and as soon as Gillespie hit that bomb, we were on TV Delight. Our viewers went through the roof because people love watching other people die in real life. It's sick. We are a sick species of people. So I work at Barstool, so I'm unprofessional by nature. I love it. I love the idea. And I think, but the thing is, I watched Anchorman. I know you broadcasters, you guys will get into street fights over anything. So I'm not working with any of you guys.
I hope somebody does it now that you mentioned it. I hope
I think it's a great, or if you're an up and comer and you want to share your skills or whatever. It was funny that Judge hit that one the other day that was like to the warning track.
Shout out that cameraman too for just completely tricking the entire baseball world.
It's like it's a jersey.
That was great, man. Anyway, just some quick Mets talk before we let you go here. I mean, this is so when you started broadcasting with the Mets, do you start to love this team, love the franchise, start to root for them, or are you still pretty impartial?
Well, 2015 was my first year associated with the Mets, so I was thrown right in, going all the way to the World Series. They beat the Cubs to go to the World Series.
Oh, that's
So that was
right.
crazy.
Yeah.
So for me, that was really like surreal. But I think it's like a player. Like when you're on a team, like you want them to win. Like I want the Mets to win. I want to be in that World Series broadcast booth and calling Mets games. And especially now that I've been there a while, like I certainly associate with the Mets fans and what they go through and how the ride has been for them since 1986. And I'd love to see Mets fans get the opportunity to celebrate winning a World Series and getting to that point, especially this generation of fans. You guys, I mean, I'm sure Kevin, you weren't even old enough.
I was one was a couple years old. This is, we always say everybody talks about 108 years for the Cubs and 86 years for the Red Sox. And I know about, your grandma and your grandma's grandma, but as far as I'm concerned, never won in my lifetime.
Yeah,
so I don't care if it's
might as well be 108 years, right?
Zero. So we are kind of the most tortured generation. We're old enough to have sat through all these years, but young enough that we missed any of the good ones. So
yeah, I'd love to see them to do it. And I'm there's a degree of impartiality, I guess, when you're broadcasting anyway. You don't want to sound like a ridiculous homer, but we certainly lean toward the Mets and we want the Mets to win. And I don't think we even try to hide that. So growing up somewhere else, I did have to learn about the franchise and learn about its history. Good thing I sit next to a Mets encyclopedia every day.
Seriously, one of the best ever to do it, man. He is unreal.
Yeah, he is. He's really great. And he's
also, what? We can just throw out the first, 50, 60 years. Just think about the Cohen era. That's all we need. Certainly throw out that Wilpon era. We'll pretend that didn't happen. It's the dark ages. And we can just focus on the new history being written.
Yeah. Life is good now for a Mets fan.
Can you sense a difference? Like, yeah.
No, and I really like Fred and Jeff, and I don't want to throw them under the bus in any way. They were really good to me. But it is like covering a different franchise now in the way that things are run and the way that the Mets look at things. And there's a lot of changes too internally. There's a lot of new faces and different people around, and new manager, new general manager, new players. So things have changed, and bringing in a guy like Max Scherzer is something that would not have happened in the last 10 years or so for the Mets. So it is covering a different franchise entirely. And so, yeah, there's a noticeable difference, and we'll see how this team takes it this year. But I fully expect them to be competitive every year, under this ownership moving forward.
Wayne's not planning October vacations for the foreseeable future right now. I like that.
Exactly.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate it. Great call. You nailed it. You should have bought a lotto ticket that day too, man. To get $699 and $700 is it's actually interesting that he did $499 and $500. So maybe that's just Pujols' thing when he smells blood in the water.
Yeah, 600 was a grand slam. The guy just loves drama, He loves it, and that means you got to face him in October too. So we'll see if he has any more drama left. Maybe he got it out of his system with 700.
And I can definitely say, with October coming up and a lot of national broadcasts, everybody should be giving Howie and Wayne a listen, because there's just something better about it. You guys know the team, you know what you're doing. No disrespect to any of the other guys, but I feel like the Mets TV and radio are like the absolute best in the business. So keep that up, because
thanks, guys.
A huge difference for the fans. In the dark years, the broadcasting teams were like all we had, and it was almost like we were rooting for those guys instead of the players. So keep it up. We appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys.
Have a good one.
Mets. Let's go, Wayne.